vulnerable, and ultimately somebody that wasn't enough. And then the second reason was just I didn't feel like I could share a partial goal or something I hadn't thought fully through yet. I didn't want to be seen as unthoughtful or imperfect or like I wasn't enough, and so as a result, I just kept my goals to myself. And it wasn't until that conversation that I realized how silly that was, and I just said, "Fuck it. Why don't I start sharing more about who I am, where I'm at?" I could not tell you. This is going to sound like a massive understatement. I could not tell you how much of an impact that made. This is going to sound crazy, but it's the truth. I felt for the first time in my life, I'm turning 29 this week, so we'll call it 29 years, like I really experienced love. And let me break that down for you. I've experienced love before, but I started to share who I was, what I was going through, my goals, and not just career, but as an individual with the people closest to me. And I was able to see their faces and responses. And I realized that, wow, for a very, very long time, was so good at asking questions, hence why I started my own show. And I was horrible at opening up and letting people see who I am and being seen. I had no idea how much connection I was missing as a result of not doing that. Connection for my own self. And I realized that there was so much beauty in being seen. And the gentlemen who are on this call, I was talking with them about this, and they just had such brilliant, brilliant things to say. And Kyle, I'm going to kick it to you and just ask you to kind of pick up where I'm leaving off here. And if you remember what you told me slash what you're feeling now, I feel as though people would love that. For anybody else out there who's struggling with sharing who they are, this is for you. Off to you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for the baton handoff there. What we mentioned before was, I brought up Robin Williams to you and compared you to him in the instance that there's definitely a trend observed in psychology of people who feel the most and who are hurting the most, having the most to say or like the most impactful things to say, being able to be of service to a level that, let's just say, the average bear usually isn't able to get to. Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. He talks about how like the fact that he's dealt with a tremendous amount of pain in his own suffering allows him to serve others. And there's a lot to be said about your ability to do that. Like, I don't know, all social interaction just kind of feels like us feels like our ability to be there for other people has a lot to do with our ability to be there for ourselves, and how willing we are to be open has a lot to do with how willing we are um, to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable. So I think that's what she was speaking to, and that's what came up with us.
So I remember when you compared me to Robin Williams, and I made a joke, and then Matt clarified it, and I'm gonna ask him to clarify it in a moment. I was like, wait, man, like I love Robin Williams, and complete respect to his name. May he rest in peace, and his family find peace. And he also, very unfortunately, took his own life. And I said it almost tongue in cheek to soften the blow because I didn't feel like you were comparing me to him for that reason. But it turns out you were. And Matt, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak on that. First, I want to highlight what it is that you have, or the specific trait you have that is beautiful, similar to Robin Williams, which is when you walk into the room, you have this ability to make sure that everyone in the room is seen. Just as Robin Williams does. Robin Williams would go in there, and every person that he would see and witness in the room and impact, he would make sure that they were seen and that they were known and were able to feel seen. And that's something that you're extremely good at. And so that's the thing, though, is Robin Williams ended his life without truly understanding the depth of the impact that he had on the lives of so many others. In that same regard, you have a huge impact on other people's lives because you always seek to make others feel seen and heard, but in not allowing yourself to be seen and heard and not sharing yourself with others, you then ostracize yourself and end up making yourself feel alone and not truly sharing yourself with others. And so Kyle was really trying to highlight that, hey, I see that same thing in you. Like, you have this beautiful ability to help others and to witness others, but in the process of not sharing yourself, you're leading down the same path. And one of the things that we also highlighted, though, is that you are actively getting off of that path, which this conversation that you had with Gabby highlighted that in a beautiful way.
Yeah, exactly. I think the motivation was to let you know that you basically, it's funny because this came up in
Kyle,
a, yeah.
Kyle, Matt, are you getting a little choppy audio on Kyle's end as well, or is that just me?
I got a little bit of choppy audio.
Kyle, could you do me a favor? Could we troubleshoot this for a quick sec?
Sure.
Kyle, if you could hear me, yeah, it's coming in a little bit laggy.
Okay, let me come in from.
Do you have any other tabs open? Anything like taking up a lot of bandwidth?
Yeah, I do.
Like a YouTube or.
I do. Let me close some stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead and start closing some stuff on my end. It looks like you have a lot of room to play with bandwidth while so your computer's not overloaded. How's your Wi-Fi generally, Kyle?
It's really
I'm
good.
getting a network is struggling notification on your end.
Yeah, that's a computer thing, not a Wi-Fi thing. But I'm definitely closing tabs and stuff right now.
No problem. I'll let you close those out.
I'll try hopping out and hopping back in. Maybe that'll help too.
Just give me.
Sound really good right now.
Yeah. You sound great right now. Do you want to hop back on the tab that is Squadcast and like just click the page? Like Squadcast can tell if you're on a different tab. So if you want to hop back in the browser and just keep it on your focal point, I think it'll help your network.
Okay, I think we're good now. It looks. I don't have that signal on mine anymore. Like the thing saying that it's not operating well.
Yeah, you can see that too. All right. Okay. Cool. I think that.
It's
all right. They
now.
both just went away. Beautiful. All right. Let's go.
Cool. So yeah, what I wanted to say is that it's interesting that this topic came up on the note of a love rant. I was giving you some love for your birthday and specifically acknowledging your growth over the last year. And I think that one of the things that I've observed you do really well is you went from focused on finding your passion and your purpose or mission to discovering it through doing the work, and in doing so, like you've gotten closer to finding those things. I think that also allowed you to stop thinking about yourself and like assessing yourself in relation to some form of completeness that you think is out there, that is out there, but is actually in there, as in you. And really, it's like it's an inner journey, which is kind of the irony of someone going out to look for it. It's kind of like the Buddhist notion of enlightenment. But yeah, all that is to say that I brought up the Robin Williams thing so that you could not validate those thoughts, those negative thoughts of incompleteness or of a lack of value or or anything other than you being everything that you need to be. We all have those thoughts. The inner critic is present in all of us to whatever degree, but you being able to like remove any authority from that inner critic, that inner critic shouldn't be abusive, and sometimes we are abusive with ourselves with those inner thoughts. I know I can be, and just from knowing you as well as I do, I know that that's been there as well, and I feel like that gets in the way of you doing a lot of good, and even realizing how much good you're doing, which Matt touched on. And so that's the thing. I want to celebrate your growth there, but draw attention to the fact that if you ever take any steps back, or that critic steps back into the room, that you know better than to listen to him in that sense.
Really well said. No surprise, and as usual, I appreciate the love. It's interesting that when you start sharing who you are with the world, the fear that a lot of people have, that I had, was, oh my God, I'm gonna lose love. I'm gonna be seen as not enough. I'm gonna be seen as that. And then the opposite's true. It's almost like part of accepting yourself is sharing yourself, because sharing yourself it's an act of acceptance. You know, um, like you're demonstrating to others, but most importantly, that yourself, that you accept yourself enough to share who you are with the world. That's a phenomenal thing. Um, like, hey, this is okay. I'm willing to give it to you. And to also have that response be positive is a blessing, but it's not a necessity. It's not. And I also recall that, Matt, you mentioned something profound. You took it to a level that was meta. Do you remember what you said about how, like, commenting on sharing your failures is actually a great way for others to learn as well?
Yeah, I definitely remember that. One of the key points that I wanted to point out, and this goes back to just another amazing trait about you, is you wanting to help others. Well, in the process of sharing your failures, you actually do end up helping others, because they get to then witness you in your vulnerable state, and they get to witness you overcome that failure.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of being open and sharing those failures is you allow others to see that, and to see that it's okay to fail, and to then also empower them to be able to share and overcome their own failures. And that in itself is a beautiful gift, that something that can be seen negative, like failure, actually ends up becoming something that's beautiful and helpful to others, because then it's no longer this thing that isn't something that's tied to not being enough, but it's then something that's tied to your growth, and it's tied to you becoming a better version of yourself, and others being able to witness that.
Yeah, and to that point, Matt, there's a lot of trust that gets built through that act of vulnerability. Like you're modeling behavior for one thing, like letting them know that it's okay to be that vulnerable and to fail, but also that there's strength in it, and that there's bravery and courage in the perseverance of continuing to push forward, even though you've stumbled, even though you might think you're not good enough at a certain moment, you know? There's an interesting like parallel to draw with sports, like when you observe elite athletes, the more time you spend with them, the more you see that they don't feel like a champion every day. In fact, most days they might even want to quit the sport. It's really just about having an answer to that inner critic. And the more you can be vulnerable and put on display your journey in conversation with your inner critic, the more you're going to inspire others who might not have the competency or just the courage that you do. And that's really the beauty about knowing you.
Yeah, I appreciate all the love, and I also mentioned on the call that I would be a dick if I let you guys give me all this love, and I didn't give it right back. If I'm anything, and I appreciate all of what you guys have said. It's on the backs of great friends like you both. You guys have been there for me in very dire times, and stayed on the phone with me for hours and trialed through inconvenient, unclear, frustrating circumstances, and really helped me decision make. And what I didn't realize would end up being cornerstones. And so, thank you to you both. You both are masters at your crafts, and I love you both. I was on the phone with a friend the other day, yesterday, funnily, and he said something profound. He actually referenced a Michelle Obama documentary, which I didn't even know fucking existed. I gotta watch that shit. Have you guys seen that shit?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't either.
Did y'all know that shit existed, or like was that just me?
No, I knew about the book. The
Wow.
documentary was only around the corner, I guess.
Yeah. Matt, did you know about the documentary?
I did not.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that none of us knew, but anyways, he was talking about something she said that really stuck with him. I'll share it with you guys. And it was that Michelle said, we dream our whole lives of being those people and being around those other people that have done it too. And then she said one day she realized she was at a dinner with those people, and she's sitting next to them, and they're sitting around her, and no one. She said everyone had the same thing. No one knew how. Half the people there had no idea how they got there too. Half the people there had no idea how they got there too, and like that's just a part of life. And so a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm an imposter." Hey, at the highest levels, at the presidency's levels, half these motherfuckers have no idea how they got there too. And so if that's the case, then this whole thing is just something much grander than what we thought it was. It's like part of the human spiritual being, emotional being, mental being, physical being, animal, to at some point feel, and at many points feel like we're not enough, or we're inadequate, or we're not cut out for this. And it's our job to override that, because at a certain point in life that was tremendously useful. It really kept us alive. And I know I'm giving y'all the song and fucking dance. You guys have heard this 1,000 times. In the savannas of Africa, that used to be a thing where it used to tell you there's a lion. I don't even really find that shit relatable when speakers talk about that. So I'm like, yeah, that shit was a long time ago, bro. All I'll say is that, you'll be, and I'll be in social situations where it turns on, where you're like, whoa, am I enough? Am I whatever? And that quote by Michelle Obama just really stuck out to me. It made me feel like, wow, if the presidential family is feeling this and is noticing this in their constituents, that's wild. That means that everybody probably feels it. And I just found that really, really relatable. What do you have to say to that, Kyle? Like, I have a feeling you might give a good answer around that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like not everybody develops competency deliberately, and even those that do, they're so obsessed with developing competency that they spend more time looking for it than acknowledging it in themselves. And I mean, there's people on the other side of the spectrum that acknowledge competency that isn't there, but staying on track. It's like, I feel like there's an authority that we give to that inner critic. I mean, myself personally, I have athletic experience and entrepreneurial, and um, for me, it's like there's moments when there's an advantage to the like naivety of thinking you're enough without having proof in the pudding. Like that's how we do great things. That's how we do things that we once thought or think are impossible, is just by daring greatly in that way. But in another sense, in a more practical or professional sense, sometimes imposter syndrome is an indication that you need to train more, which is kind of how I tend to look at it. Like if I haven't put in the work, or if I'm feeling insecure about my competency, then I need to put in more work. And if I've put in that work and I can fall back to that and I feel that feeling anyways, then all of a sudden that inner critic, the authority of the inner critic, like isn't validated. And so then I can shut him up or take the mic away in that metaphoric sense. Whereas, like, I don't know if you guys have known my favorite TED talk, Nick, I've definitely shared it with you a bunch. It's by Adam Grant. He talks about like the surprising habits of original thinkers. And he talks about how when an original, quote unquote, original writes a draft of an essay or whatever, that they will think, oh, like all first drafts suck. Like they won't internalize it. Whereas the average bear will read their first draft and realize that it sucks and think I must suck. And I think a lot of it, just I'm bringing this up to say that the way that we internalize feedback, even the feedback of our inner critic or the imposter syndrome, because that's really where that comes from. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it isn't, but it's never right to have it understood as like an indication of your quality or worth as a person. You know, like if something's not going well, it's because your strategy isn't good enough, or it's because the effort maybe isn't there, but it's never because you're not a good enough person. And yeah, I just felt like that's worth saying, because sometimes that inner critic can be abusive with their words.
Yeah, it could be outright detrimental, man. I completely agree. That's what we're saying. Matt, any closing thoughts here, man? Anything from you, brother?
Yeah, I think another just important thought and thing to remember is that every person has a different definition and meaning for something. And that goes back even to emotions. Someone feels happiness for whatever rules that they decide to make for how to feel that happiness. And there are people who understand what those rules are and choose what those rules are and make them for themselves. And there's a lot of people who don't realize yet that they can make those rules and they can choose what those things mean to themselves. And so I think a good closing thought is just to remember that you have the ability to choose those things for yourself, to make those rules for things for yourself, and thus, in a way, have more power over your emotions and the decisions that you want to make in the future.
Yeah, I really like that as a closing point. Like, I think it's easy to forget that there's so much there's so much education out there today on this, which is part of the beauty of the age that we live in. And there's so many tools available to us. And the real question is, are you going to take advantage of that power? Are you going to access that power? Are you going to access those truths and use them to make your life better? Or are you going to let them remain dormant? And most people let shit remain dormant. We are creatures of comfort, people. We are creatures of comfort. You try beating comfort. Let me know if you get through. I have not figured that out. And you just got to force yourself to do some shit, a la Kyle's point earlier. And this is something worth forcing upon yourself. Believe me, it's something I'm working through in active time and speak to the benefits. Matt, it sounds like you have something to share there.